Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Earthling Weight Loss. Thank you for tuning in again today. This video is going to be without video because I haven't been able to find, the perfect place to film yet. I'm in a new house in a new province, and so I'll work on getting just the right lighting and everything to make the video look good, but for now I'm just going to do audio and try to keep you guys engaged with some relevant pictures and videos and things like that. So today's audio is going to discuss a video that I had made capturing my initial excitement after watching a video featuring Dean Ornish, Gary Taubes, Dr. Mehmet Oz was the mediator, and then also a person from the American Heart Association. I'm not sure her name. So I had posted this video intending to do follow-up video, so sorry to you guys that were, wondering what the heck was wrong with me, kind of giving you guys just a little bit of information. But now I'm going to discuss it. So basically I watched the entire video. It was really interesting. I got to learn more about one of my idols, Dr. Dean Ornish, and got to, enjoy the way he explained things, because he's very, very great at explaining his own reasonings, and he's basically done the research that has been so important to promoting a plant-based diet. Like, I reference his research all the time. Gary Taubes is not a doctor or a scientist. He's a science writer, which I can't diss his credentials too much because that's basically what I am. I write about science, I do videos on science topics, and so there's nothing wrong with that, but I do disagree with the points that he makes throughout this video. Unfortunately, in my opinion, he's made the wrong conclusions reading the information that I have. Alright, so this was a fairly open debate. It didn't really have that much of a focus. They were just talking basically about heart health and what research has been done so far that says this about our diet in relationship to heart disease. So I'm just going to talk about the part that really struck a chord with me, and this is when, there was some back and forth between Dean Ornish and Gary Taubes. Gary Taubes, believes that fat is not the problem in obesity or in heart disease because of the statistics showing that we have decreased our percentage of calories coming from fat, and we still have this increase in heart disease and obesity. And so he's saying fat isn't the problem, fat is actually the solution, just based on noticing these different correlations. And Dean Ornish's response really opened my eyes to understanding why some people believe this, because it does make sense when you explain it a certain way, but you also have to consider the other factors at play. Dr. Dean Ornish says that, yes, our percentage of fat in our diet has decreased. However, our overall calories that we eat throughout a day have increased. Therefore, our fat in grams has also increased. The percentage is lower, but this doesn't really matter because we're still eating more fat physically in grams, and the reason why our overall calorie intake has increased is because of refined processed carbohydrates. Now, you've heard me talk about in other videos just the fact that even white granulated sugar is not going to contribute to weight gain on its own. It's just physiologically impossible. It does not happen under normal dietary circumstances that the body turns our sugar into fat. However, the one thing that I took away from this that I think was most important is fat and sugar together as this duo, as this team, is the reason for weight gain. People on high fat diets also are going to be gaining weight, but people on high fat, high refined carbohydrate diets are going to be at a huge risk for developing weight issues. Now, why is this? Well, first we need to talk about glycemic responses. Because when we consume carbohydrates, refined or complex, we have this rise in blood sugar. And then our pancreas releases insulin, and the insulin allows the sugar into our cells. Like, I've talked about this before. So when you consume refined carbohydrates, just because they're already so close to simple sugars that it's easier for our body to have this rise, because they basically go from, the simple sugars in our food, and now some of them are already glucose, and so they can be absorbed right away, and they enter our circulatory system. And all this insulin is produced to allow it into the cells. And at the same time, when there's a rise of insulin in our body, The enzyme in our adipocytes, our fat cells, also is stimulated to become more active. And so this lipoprotein lipase enzyme allows us to extract the fat molecules that have been carried, to the fat cells by our VLDLs and our chylomicrons, and allow it to be reassembled into triglycerides for storage. And so that becomes our body fat. And so there is an intimate relationship between blood sugar rises, insulin, and fat storage. And this becomes really important because it's true, we are eating way more refined carbohydrate sources just because our technology for, getting white flour and white sugar has become so primed that it's very easy to produce these things, whereas before, we relied on more hardy grains just because we didn't have the technology to remove the husk and the fiber and all this stuff that we now have. We are eating more refined carbohydrates at the same time as eating more fats. And this combination is just the perfect recipe for weight gain because it's making our lipoprotein lipase enzyme more sensitive, and so it's able to store fat at a very efficient rate, and we're having an abundance of fat in our diet. And so the problem is not sugar by itself, the problem is fat by itself, and the problem is sugar and fat together. Okay, so Gary Taubes, I just would like to talk about him a little bit, just because I think it's really fascinating how someone can read, the same research that I'm reading and take away such different conclusions, because he's against sugar. He thinks that sugar is the cause of weight gain. And he believes that a diet that limits sugar or that tries to cut out carbohydrates altogether will be the healthiest for a human being. And so he suggests, having sausage and eggs and bacon, all these, different things for food sources, to avoid carbohydrates, to avoid this glycemic response, and to avoid the activation of this lipoprotein lipase. And so that's a very extreme recommendation. I mean, I think so. Just because if someone wanted to lose weight, I would say right away, cut down on your fat. Cut it down as much as you can, so it's 10% or less of your daily calories. Because glycemic responses are normal. Sugar is our fuel source. Don't cut out sugar. Cut down on your fat. And so even though this lipoprotein lipase is stimulated, there's no excess fat to store. It's just not there at all. This is how a human being should eat. So it fuels itself with energy. And then when these mechanisms come into play where they're going to store excess fat as stored energy in body fat, there's just no excess fat to do that with. And so your body becomes just this machine that's able to energize itself, and there's no need to store energy because you're always providing it with energy in the form of complex carbohydrates and, fruit sugars, complex and simple carbohydrates. They're all fine as long as you're cautious about how much fat you're eating. Okay, so yes, Gary Taubes, he really seems to do the research. It's just the conclusions that he makes are so weird. Like Dean Ornish says in this video, I encourage you guys to watch this video. It is a little bit long, but I found it pretty interesting and easy to watch. And Dean Ornish says, you don't go from eating simple carbohydrates to pork rinds. That's not the way to do things. You have to go, if you're wanting a more wholesome diet, go from simple carbohydrates, like white flour or maybe white rice, and switch to a richer, more wholesome food like brown rice, brown pasta, multigrain bread. Those are the choices that you should make. Those are the simple switches. You don't go from eating, maybe some crappy carbohydrates, which they're still not going to make you fat. Or really do anything to your health. But if you want to have just a more whole food diet, then don't go from, eating some lollipops to eating pork rinds. Go from eating lollipops to some vegetable soup, right, with some rice and potatoes and corn and things like that. That is going to do wonders for your health. Eating pork rinds and bacon and sausage and eggs are just not going to cut it. They actually will do harm to your health. And also, one has to note the fact that people's concept of carbohydrates and fat is a little confused at this point. Because, say if I went out on the street and, pulled maybe 5 people together and asked if I could, ask them some questions about nutrition or food. And I would say, so name a sugary food. Name something that has sugar in it. They're likely going to say cinnamon buns, cake, donuts, ice cream. These are all things that people believe are highly concentrated in sugar, in carbohydrates. But the fact is that all the things that I just listed, yes, they do have sugar, but they have an enormous amount of fat. right? And these are the things that will make people gain weight because these food items have both of the two things that I listed that would contribute to weight gain. They have refined carbohydrates, and so you're missing the water and fiber. That's really important because water and fiber, when it enters your stomach, it helps to expand the walls of your stomach and, make the stretch receptors ding and tell your body to stop eating. And so when you take away the fiber and water from these carbohydrates, you also are able to eat more of it without feeling full. And so, you're eating a whole bunch of fat in that cinnamon bun, and you're eating a whole bunch of sugar without the water and fiber, and so it's going to cause your body to have a glycemic response, make the lipoprotein lipase more, sensitive and activated, and then your fat cells are going to be saying, yep, come on in, let's turn you to body fat. And so I would say a sugary food is a potato, because these are long chains of sugars, and they have both water and fiber that are going to be making you feel full after you eat maybe like 5 to 6 potatoes. Or I can eat that much. I don't know if you guys can, but I love potatoes. Potatoes. Alright, I also found it really interesting to look through the comments of this video, and you can too, and tell me what you think, because what I saw is an enormous support group for Gary Taubes. Everyone seemed to think that Gary Taubes was like this amazing person that just seemed to know everything, and that he was like battling the frontier of traditional medicine like Dr. Dean Ornish and this lady from the American Heart Association, and that he was like this, knight in shining armor that, said things that made sense and kind of went above the knowledge of, Dr. Dean Ornish. And wow, I was so surprised because it's like Dr. Dean Ornish, he's not really a traditional physician. He doesn't believe in recommending like people to take pharmaceuticals over dietary and lifestyle changes. In my opinion, Gary Taubes is more traditional because he's trying to take advantage of the naive public and what they like to hear about their bad habits. And, Dean Ornish has done so much for patients that have been in the last states of heart disease where, they're probably certain that they're going to suffer a heart attack and die from it, one day. And he's provided those people with an alternative, with the alternative of life, health, and longevity. And Gary Taubes, I think, is motivated by helping people, but I just don't think that he's doing it the right way, or the way that will help people. I don't know, tell me what you guys think. If you've, listened to Gary Taubes before, what are your thoughts on him? Because, in my opinion, I don't like to watch him. I just think that he overlooks a bunch of evidence. He only favors the evidence that supports his own beliefs. It's sort of like confirmation bias. And also, if you check out this video, now that I've recommended it, come back to this page and just write your thoughts on it and tell me what you've, kind of taken away from it. Thank you guys for tuning in once again today. I'm definitely going to work on getting, the video component of these videos to my liking, to my standards. And it's funny because when I was back in Saskatoon, my recording equipment included a sock that I cut, the foot end out of, some duct tape, and then my lamp. And I literally stood in front of my window and slipped my cell phone into this sock. And it was duct taped to this part of my lamp that just is able to have a really good angle. And then I'd say, record video, and then my phone would start to record. And that's literally how I've been doing my videos. And it's been working out pretty good because I think visually it looks pretty good, even though I've done it with such simple equipment. Yeah, I really like doing that, getting by with just the minimal and having it, turn out good. I don't know. I'm a pretty big cheapskate, but I don't think it's a problem at this point, so I hope you have an abundant day, Earthlings, and I will see you next video. Bye.